Hello everyone. Hello Erica, hello Lindsay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi everyone. I'm Anna from GreenGeeks, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on getting started with WordPress SEO by our guest speaker, Lindsay Halsey. I will introduce, Lindsay in a moment, but glad to have you here, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Real quick, I want to say a couple of words about GreenGeeks. For those of you who are watching and are not familiar with us, we're a 300% green energy web hosting provider, which essentially means we put back 3 times the amount of power we consume into the grid in the form of renewable energy. And we have been recognized by the US EPA since 2009 as a green power partner. We offer share hosting, reseller hosting, VPS, and dedicated server. Also, I wanted to share something new with you, a new initiative to enhance our commitment to the environment as being green. For every customer who signs up for our web hosting, we are planting a tree with 1 tree planted. Moving on to the webinar, I'm just going to go through some quick housekeeping items. Please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A, and Lindsay will be answering them at the end of the presentation. You're welcome to chat in the chat room. We will be monitoring that. Just remember to select all panelists and attendees if you want everyone to see what you're discussing. And as always, you know, we're recording this. So if you have to step away, don't worry, because we'll be sending you the recording in the next few days. Okay, I'm going to introduce first from our team at GreenGeeks, Erica. Erica will be assisting with us as with the chat and the Q&A. Erica, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Thank you, Anna. And hi, everyone. My name is Erica Barbosa. I am from Costa Rica. I work in the partners team. And today I'm going to be in the chat, reading your comments and sharing some information. And I hope you enjoy today with Lindsay. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Erica. And I'm going to introduce Lindsay, of course, our guest speaker. Lindsay is a co-founder of Pathfinder SEO. She has over 10 years of experience working in SEO with small to large businesses. Lindsay focuses on teaching site owners, freelancers, and agencies how to get found on Google via a guided approach to SEO. Welcome, Lindsay. Would you like to say hi to the attendees and dive right into the presentation?
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today, and let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start sharing my screen and go into present mode here, and we'll get rolling. So today we're going to talk about getting started with WordPress SEO. And my goal is that whether you're a total beginner, new to SEO, maybe new to WordPress, or a more advanced practitioner, that you walk away with actionable steps that you can take to grow traffic to your website or to your clients' websites. A little bit of means of agenda here today. We'll start by talking about what search engine optimization is and how the search engines work, a few basics. We'll talk about the anatomy of a search engine's results page to make sure we're all on the same page, even though I know we're looking at something very familiar to everyone when it comes to a Google search. And then I want to spend the bulk of our time breaking SEO down for you into 4 pillars and giving you a framework to understand all of the elements that influence the search engine performance for a site. I'm going to walk through a handful of initial recommended steps that I think are the best place to get started with SEO for your WordPress site. And then we'll save tons of time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to start putting those in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to save time for that here at the end. So let's start at the beginning and define search engine optimization, or SEO. It is the art and science of getting your website found in the free or organic space of Google, Yahoo, and Bing. The goal of SEO is pretty simple. We usually start with goals around rankings. So we desire to be higher on the page on Google, closer to #1. And so one of the goals of SEO starting out can be to improve rankings. But what we really mean is that we want to increase traffic to our website. We want more volume, more visitors to our site. And even deeper than that, our main goal tends to be to generate more leads or to increase sales or whatever the conversion point is on your website. And so when we think about setting goals for an SEO campaign, I really look at it as in this kind of stair-step manner, where I'm setting a series of goals around improving rankings, increasing traffic, but then at the end of the day, measuring the return on investment by looking at more leads and increases in sales. So before we get into how we're going to do that, let's talk for a minute about how the search engines work. This is a pretty simplistic model, but in essence, it's a three-step process. The first step is that Google and the other search engines send spiders or robots to crawl web pages. They crawl the whole of the internet, or to the best of their ability, and they create an index of pages. You can think of this index as being like a Rolodex. Then when someone does a search, the search engines deliver ranked results, and they use an algorithm to calculate who's number 1 and who's number 100 and who's not even on the map. And so in essence, when we think about how search engine marketing works, first we need to make sure the search engine crawlers can crawl our web pages. Then we have to make sure that they're quality enough that they want to get included in the index. The internet is large, and so not every page on the internet is included in Google's index. And so we need to kind of meet that bar of quality of content and design and usability. And then there are all sorts of factors that are going to factor in essentially to the algorithm that's going to deliver those ranked results. And that's what we're going to break down for you when we look at this 4 pillars framework. Before we do, I want to just talk for a minute about the layout of the search engine results page, because you'll notice it's a little bit different for every search you do, but then there's some consistencies. It's really important when you're first starting out to think about the search engine results page in kind of a block format, so you kind of have a lot of clarity on your team about what you're trying to accomplish and what you're influencing. When you do a search on Google, you're usually greeted by paid advertising first and foremost. This is powered by Google Ads, and these ads are sold on a cost per click basis, meaning the advertisers pay Google every time someone clicks on one of these and goes to a website. The value of Google Ads is that it's very easy to track your return on investment, and you have a lot of tight control. You can set your budget, how much you're willing to pay on a daily or monthly basis in total. You can set your keywords, where you want your ads to show. You can set your ad text. You can control how much you're willing to pay for a given click to the site. And so it's really powerful. And then you can tie all the expenses against the return and compare that and have very clear and immediate return on investment. When I think about Google Ads or paid ads in general, what I really think about is that their value is in the immediate and short term. So the good news is you can drive traffic to your website today. The bad news is as soon as you stop paying Google, you're gonna lose that traffic. That source of traffic to your site is gonna go away. And so that's really one of the places where organic search, or SEO, kicks into gear. A lot of the reasons that we want to show up well in the organic or free section of the search engine results is because it's like long-term capital. It's going to take us some elbow grease and some effort to earn those listings and earn that placement. But then it's our long-term business capital, and that traffic is going to come to us for the months and years to come. Within the organic results, it's a dynamic landscape. And so there's a mix of what I'd consider sort of real estate. Here I've showcased essentially 2 pieces of the real estate. One piece of the real estate is that people also ask section. So that's where Google's actually trying to answer questions that people might be asking around a topic right there on Google. And in some ways that's Google getting us to just do more searches because they're answering our questions right there, and then we don't click through to another website. In other ways, it's really great brand building. And so it's a great way for you to get in front of an audience and get high up in the search results. We also have a traditional free listing below. So the Amazon listing there is what we think of as a traditional organic search listing. And at the end of the day, when we invest in SEO, we're investing in all of these places where we can get free traffic. So the strategy that we're following actually targets all of these spaces. And there's one more that can pop into a search result that's very notable, and that's the local results, or what we call the 3-pack. And so if Google thinks that a search query has some kind of a local intent, you're looking for a local service or a local business, they're going to showcase 3 listings, the 3 top listings in that geographic area. And what we love about local SEO is that it really levels the playing field. Sometimes it's hard to compete in the other search results for a smaller business. But as soon as you get into local SEO, you tend to find spaces where you can really get great exposure for free on Google and compete against some of the larger national brands that are out there. We look at local search and SEO as being sort of one and the same. Local search really applies to any business that either has a physical location, think restaurant, or a service area. And so that's a large swath of businesses that can get placed into this space. So now that we have a big picture framework around what's going on with how the search engines work and what the layout looks like, I want to start to break down that algorithm for you in more detail. And when we think about SEO, we break it down into 4 pillars. We have technical SEO, content, on-site optimization, and off-site optimization, or SEO. And the first thing I want to note about these 4 pillars is SEO is not the kind of game where you can be really strong in a couple areas and super weak in a few others and still get good visibility. Your end goal is to build a baseline within each of these pillars of SEO. Those are the sites that perform the best. So we can't just have great technical and great content and no on-site and no off-site optimization. It's not about getting an A in one place and an F in another. Instead, we're trying to get like a B+ everywhere and then to increase that kind of grade over time to get all of those into an A. And so we talk a lot at Pathfinder SEO about this concept of building an SEO foundation. And that is trying to raise the bar in each of these pillars to meet those best practices, and then constantly evolving within each of these to make further improvements. So the first pillar of SEO is technical optimization, or technical SEO. And it makes sense because the search engines we talked about, they have to be able to crawl your website in order to index it. And so a lot of technical SEO actually has to do with how the search engines crawl and index a website. So in here we have technical SEO. There's a handful of factors. And so I do want to note that we've talked about this Google algorithm, and all the search engines have their own algorithms. They're proprietary, and they evolve over time, and they have numerous factors, and we don't get to know what they are. So that makes the game sound pretty hard. The good news is there are certain factors that we know are sort of tried and true, and as we focus on those areas, we can have more impact. So we don't always have to worry about the nitty-gritty when it comes to SEO. We can focus on the big swath areas where we know we're going to have an impact based on the time that we put into our SEO. Because really, unlike the paid dynamic of Google Ads where you pay Google, with SEO, your primary cost is your time or an agency's time into the effort. So whatever we work on, we want to be impactful with that so that we can spend 3 hours and make some really great progress versus like 20 hours and working on something that maybe won't deliver those results. And so when we think about the algorithms within each of these pillars, what we're going to think about is what are the most important factors? What are the most important elements we need to be thinking about? And for technical SEO, these are the most important factors to look at. And so the first factor in technical SEO that we look for is what's called a robots.txt file. Your robots.txt file in WordPress is typically created on a default basis. And what I love about the WordPress robots.txt file is that it's really simple. It's short, and this is a file that no human would go to other than SEOs, and that this file just gives a set of directions to the search engines about how to crawl and index a website. It says, don't go here. And on every website, it lives at robots.txt. And so you can often just check the box on having a good robots.txt file out of the gate because you're built in WordPress. And there's very little that you'll need to do there. The next piece of technical SEO is another set of instructions. And instead of don't go there, which is the robots.txt, Your XML sitemap is the do go here part. So it's like your website's resume. It's a list of pages. And when we think about your XML sitemap, really typically these are generated by multi-function SEO plugins that we install on a WordPress site. So we're talking about Yoast, Rank Math, All-in-One SEO, SEO Presser. These are all plugins that are going to generate this XML sitemap for you, generate that resume for you. And so creating an XML sitemap in WordPress is a pretty easy and simple thing to do. The next two areas that I look at when it comes to technical SEO are what happens when those search engine crawlers start crawling down all the links on my website and all the links out there on the web pointing back to my website. What are they going to find? And sometimes the search engine crawlers find things that are broken. And this can happen on small and large websites. And when they do, sometimes we have a link within our own website that's broken, meaning it points to a page on our site that no longer exists, or it points to an off-site resource that no longer exists. And the frustrating part for the search engines is this, this slows down their crawler bandwidth. They wasted their time trying to go down that avenue. And so that's kind of a frustrating experience. And then they hit a page not found. And so when we're working on technical SEO, one of the things we want to do on an ongoing basis is try to reduce the number of broken links on our website. And then also take any of those pesky page not found errors that might pop up and turn those into a positive user experience by adding a 301 redirect. So I think of these as sort of maintenance-oriented tasks within the realm of technical SEO, and it's a lot about being respectful to Google and saying the internet is large, and you will get frustrated with my website if I am sending you down all these broken paths, and in turn you may index fewer pages on my website. And so I want to try to make things as seamless as possible by addressing those. And then the last piece of technical SEO is a concept called page experience. You might have heard right now that Google is rolling out some algorithm changes all around the concept of page experience. And these are getting rolled out over the summer months. It started and it's going to continue for the next couple of months. And so page experience is a myriad of factors. It's like a group of factors. And page experience is all about security. It's all about speed, and it's all about mobile usability. So once again, some of the elements of being on WordPress are really in your favor when it comes to page experience. And then others we have to be mindful of, just like every other website out there. In this era, most people are using responsive WordPress themes. And so the idea of being mobile friendly is an out-of-the-box feature that you're going to have in your WordPress site. So very often little work is done there. When it comes to security, security is really great when you work with a great host like GreenGeeks. And when you add security plugins to your WordPress site, you can bring those things together and make sure that your site has a secure experience. One of those factors is HTTPS, so making sure that you have an SSL certificate installed. And so that's going to be kind of one of those gimmies, essentially, if you're working with a great host like GreenGeeks, and if you've added a security plugin to your WordPress site to make sure you're kind of shoring things up. Security should be nice and sound. And then lastly, you have speed. And now this is a much trickier one. Great speed starts with great hosting. So again, working with a great host like GreenGeeks is going to level you up in the speed department. But then there are more factors in the WordPress space. Images can be really heavy, for instance, and can differentiate why one WordPress site is fast and one is slower. There are caching and all sorts of things that you can do to speed up your WordPress site. And so what happens within technical SEO is essentially in the page experience is that Google is making these factors I just described more important in the algorithm over the summer months. Most websites we work with, they haven't nailed it in the speed department yet. And at the end of the day, you know, that's going to be the most challenging bar to meet within technical SEO. And the frustrating part there, sometimes it feels like the bar is also changing. Like what Google's saying they want is changing when it comes to speed. And so what I can say is the biggest thing there is to build awareness around your site speed, which you can do in the Google Search Console. And to start to understand that interplay, but to know that we're not seeing sites that aren't super speedy drop off the map on Google. So we're not seeing this direct correlation right now of any major changes in rankings and performance because of issues with speed. We just know we need to keep working at speed, just like years ago, we all had to work at mobile usability or all had to work at moving to HTTPS and securing our site. So technical SEO, one big component of what needs to happen. And what I would say is that, you know, if I had to make a generalization in the WordPress space, the technical SEO score of your out-of-the-box WordPress site's already like at a B. So for the most part, this is a generalization, but you're already doing pretty well in the technical space. And there's just some refinements and improvements that we can make. And then that brings us to the next pillar, which is content. And so now the search engines have crawled and indexed our website. And now what they find is our content. And this is the backbone of SEO. You've probably heard phrases like content is king and things like that. And the reason is because content is how you share your expertise. And it's that expertise that Google wants to value and reward by sharing online. And so when we think about what kind of content does well, there's a couple of things that are going to make your content perform. And the first is quality. You know, it needs to be well-written content and it needs to be unique, something that you wrote, not something copied from somewhere else. And that's going to be the most important aspect to content all day long. The next is going to be keyword usage. In the old days, you probably read web copy where they just repeated the same word over and over and over again. And you thought, wow, this doesn't really meet the quality guidelines because it's just keyword repetition. And fortunately, Google's and the other search engines have evolved well beyond that. And so when we think about content and keywords, what we think about is we need to use the words and phrases we want our website to rank for. So that's pretty key. You can't typically rank for a keyword that you don't use at all. If you want to rank for luxury hotel, you can't just say the phrase boutique hotel a bunch of times and think that Google's going to assume that boutique and luxury go hand in hand. You actually do need to use the phrase, but you don't have to repeat it a million times. You can use it in a couple of key places in your copy. And then you can use other words that help to support that keyword. So in that example, the word, if I want to rank for luxury hotel, boutique hotel would be helpful. The word lodging, the word travel, these other words provide context. And that context is critical because that's how we understand content in a more meaningful way than repetition. The next thing Google's looking for is some recency. So we've all seen those sites where the content got written once when the site went live, and then there's no recency. It never gets updated. And so the most frequently updated content on a website typically is going to be blogging, and that's a great way to drive traffic to your website. But there are other ways to think about the content dynamic, and that is by expanding the content on your pages, not just your posts, over time. So not letting things be super static and continually evolving, continually raising the bar on the content over time is going to help Google want to come back and re-index the site and feel like it's a fresh site. And then I think about content types. We really want to make sure that we're using the content types that make sense in our industry space. So if you're in the WordPress space, you know, we're an SEO company or GreenGeeks is hosting, we need to be putting out blog posts, right? We need to be sharing our expertise in our subject matter fields, and we need to be blogging regularly. And that's going to be a way we're going to reach our intended audience. On the other hand, you can think of some businesses maybe that don't need to be doing that kind of work. Think about your dentist office. When was the last time you went to your dentist office website and read their blog? They're better off investing in other types of content, not blogging. They're better off making sure they have the most amazing services pages that have testimonials on them or FAQs. They're better off investing that same content effort elsewhere. And so when we talk about focusing on impact, thinking about what type of content you need to focus on to reach your audience is really important, and not just following the big picture concept that everybody needs to blog or something like that. So when I think about content evolution, I kind of break it down into two simple frameworks. You have pages and you have posts. And I'm putting everything under pages. So if you're an e-commerce website, I'm putting that under pages, categories, all that stuff is under pages. And when I think about content evolution, I think about trying to find a balance between expanding copy on existing pages. I can add paragraphs, I can add testimonials, I can add that FAQ block, I can put a video on. There's so much that I can do. I'm always trying to improve usability too. So making sure that, you know, the page loads and the images are attractive. If I have a lot of content, that the design breaks the content up in a really dynamic way. Usability is a factor of SEO. And then I'm always looking at calls to action on these pages, because at the end of the day, if we're going to work hard to drive traffic, and at the end of the day we want leads, then we need to make sure that on every page of our site, we're making it easy for somebody to essentially buy now, contact now, sign up for a newsletter, etc. So that's content evolution over on the pages side. And you can really have that fall into one of two buckets. One, you can work on an existing page, right? So I have a services page about something I do. I'm going to work there. Or you can also expand your page set. So sometimes it's about, hey, when I launched the site, I just had one services page and it highlighted 4 different services on one page. And now I'm going to go back, now that my site's live, and I'm going to go build a page for each one of those services, so I can really hit home with Google that I'm an expert in these 4 things, or these are the 4 things that our company offers. So a little bit of editing existing and a little bit of creating new is a nice blend there. And then when it comes to blogging, that concept continues. So when it comes to blogging, we can basically do 2 things. 1, create new blog posts. 2, revise existing posts. And we're seeing more and more value out of that second tactic, because a lot of the things that we wrote 5 years ago are outdated, typically a little bit short for the search engines, or maybe they didn't hit home on the keyword space enough. And so you can get a lot of value out of kind of resurrecting some old posts, bringing them to the top of the fold, expanding and improving on them. And at the end of the day, when it comes to blogging, the biggest concepts to kind of hit home on are: 1, you want to follow a consistent schedule. So trying to post once a week, once a month, once a day, whatever it is, sticking to it. And then the other is that you can take your core topics and you can break those into a series of posts. So anytime we have a blog post topic, we can slice and dice it a lot of different ways. And if I had to give you an example there, Google Analytics is a big topic. So if one of the themes of my blogs is Google Analytics, I can break that topic down, instead of writing one massive post about it, into a lot of different kind of angles or lenses on it. I can talk about how to get started with Google Analytics. I can talk about Google Analytics installation via Google Tag Manager. I can talk about Google Analytics for WordPress. I can talk about adding conversion tracking or e-commerce tracking into Google Analytics. So this is a series of posts. I could write a dozen posts without even having to think too hard, all around the theme of Google Analytics. And what I'm trying to do is to share a breadth of knowledge over time on a given topic. And so when it comes to blogging and blog post strategy, one of the best ways to do it is think and identify those kind of thematic or pillars of content, those different themes of your expertise, and then to start jotting down and brainstorming topic notes by kind of flipping that topic around on its head in a lot of different ways. And so at the end of the day, when it comes to content, it doesn't really matter where you are. It always needs to evolve. There's always more we can be doing. And so these are kind of the areas where we can invest that time for impact. And that brings me to the next concept or next pillar within SEO, on-site optimization. And so when we think about the elements on a web page that are going to help the search engines get more meaning from the page and its content. So when I think about doing on-site SEO, I think about adding context to my content. And the context are a few elements of a page that are kind of website or web page specific that help the search engines better understand the content. So the first thing is your page title and your meta description. These are actually what show, not on the web page itself, but they show in the search engines when your web page is displayed. So if you're ranking #1, it's the text on Google that gets pulled in, and we want to customize that for every page on our website. It's the page title and meta description that Google actually reads before they get into the body of the content. So it's where you tell Google what this thing is going to be about and make it easy on them to market it nicely for you in the search results. Then you have your headers. If you've ever read think about an essay you might have written in high school or college, and it's just like paragraph, 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 you know, 20 pages long. And we all remember writing things like that. You can remember that you can't really scan or skim those very well. And so when you think about header tags, what you think about is breaking up the page layout in a way that makes it easy for someone to scan through the content and get the high level points, you know, just by in a quick skim in 20 seconds. And those header tags are actually really helpful for the search engines because they can digest the content in that way too. It gives structure around your content. Maybe you have that post about Google Analytics and it starts with a what, a why, and then a how, and then a where, and things like that. So by breaking each of your topics up, or each of your posts or pages up into kind of logical sections with headers, you're going to give more context around that content and show Google sort of what the outline essentially is without them having to crawl the whole page. Then we have alternative text. These are elements, this is on each image in your website and managed in the media library. And so alternative text is first and foremost a principle of accessibility. It's all about making it so that screen readers can actually identify and describe the contents of an image, but the search engines also use that to understand images. And so we want to make sure our site meets accessibility best practices because we care about accessibility. Google cares about accessibility, so it's a ranking factor, and it's an opportunity to add some contextual phrases into your images, which is helpful. And then the last piece of this puzzle here are your internal links. This is what makes it so I can navigate through content. So let's say I'm blogging, and in my content, in my blog post, I link to other pieces of content. Sometimes I'm going to link to other pieces of content on my own website, like another blog post where you could learn more. Another time, I'm going to try to link to a partner's website. It could be an off-site resource. So I could say, hey, I'm going to go and link to a blog post over on the GreenGeeks site because they've got this great resource and I don't have the same depth of expertise there. And so I'm not going to write about this. I'm just going to link out to it. And other times you're linking internally to like your core pages from your blog over to your core pages. And all of those internal links, they pass kind of link juice around the site. They make it easy for Google to crawl and navigate, and they help Google get a picture of like what pages and posts are the most important on the site. So they're contextual clues that you're passing on. Last pillar, I know we've covered a lot already, and the last pillar is OffSite SEO, and this is the one that usually makes people cringe a little. And when I said at the beginning, you have to invest in all of the parts of SEO, this is the one that most people are like, ooh, but I'll do everything, but I'm not doing that. And at the end of the day, OffSite SEO is just everything that happens off your website to build trust and authority online for your brand. And so if you've ever seen a brand new website for a brand new business go live on a new domain, what you'll find is they don't even rank for their domain. Like you cannot find the website, period, on Google. And it can be the best looking website. And you can have even done some steps to try to get Google to index it. And at the end of the day, Google's like, nope, this site has no trust and authority. It's too new. Nobody out there links to it. Nothing is happening. And that's because Google is looking at sort of these three factors, backlinks, reviews, and some social media to understand a business's trust and authority in a given space. And so backlinks come from other websites. When you link, you get a link from the Chamber of Commerce in your local area to your business website, that's a backlink. When you get a mention in somebody else's blog post back to one of your blog posts, that's a backlink. And so what we're trying to do is build that backlink profile to get bigger. And the technique that we hear is link building. And the reason we cringe is because we think about those salesy emails, spammy emails that we get that say, I checked out your website and I read this post. It's amazing. Would you link to like my own thing from this? And that's not how link building really should go in today's era. Instead, it should be all about modeling the real world for the search engines. And so you have to think about those real world relationships that a business has and go through and make sure that Google understands the context there. So if I'm an interior designer, in my business, a real world business relationship we have is with the Chamber of Commerce, right? So we're in a local space, we're a member of the chamber, I should get a link there. I also might be active on a board of directors or in some kind of charity organizations in my area or beyond. And so I could get a backlink from that nonprofit website potentially back to my business website because I'm donating time, money, energy, or whatever that might be. And then we have partners, people in adjacent industries that an interior designer does business with. So interior designers do business probably with realtors, architects, landscape designers, all sorts of people. You know, they might do business with the person who actually hangs the curtains and goes in and does that installation work. And so there can be a lot of partnerships like that that can be leveraged to cross-link between websites to help build everybody's authority together. And so when I encourage you to think about building authority, building backlinks, encourage you to start in the real world and ask yourself if Google understands all of the real world relationships that your business has, not with customers, but in this kind of broader context of community involvement and partnerships, because that's the best place to start growing that backlink network. Then you think about reviews, that makes me think about Google Maps, Facebook, things like that, places where customers can leave third-party feedback. That's hugely helpful. And then the last piece of the puzzle, and this circle should really be smaller, is social media. It's not such a direct overlap between as important as backlinks and reviews, but it is on the map in the arena of offsite SEO. So you understand how SEO works, you know the goals, you have a framework to understand when you're working on something, where to hang it task, right? So I'm working on content, that's in this, I'm fixing my page titles and meta descriptions, I'm working on on-site SEO. And your head is spinning because you're like, I could be doing all of those things at the same time, I can't take anything, and so I'm gonna take no action. And at the end of the day, the way I think about SEO is really that it's a step-by-step process, and it's about a series of small actions that accumulate over time to lead to great results. And one of the first steps in the WordPress space in SEO that you need to think about is what SEO plugin are you going to use? And there are a lot out there. Yoast, Rank Math, and All-in-One are the most common. And when it comes to kind of having an opinion on what's best, which is a very frequently asked question, there are a couple things to factor in. The first is you want to go with a multi-function SEO plugin. All three of these fit that description, because you don't want to just have a plugin that creates an XML sitemap and a different plugin that helps you verify the site with the Search Console. You want one plugin that's going to let you do a myriad of SEO things, because you can see there are a lot of elements at play. And so all of these plugins meet that bar. And you can go and check out this guide where we compare and contrast these plugins around all sorts of factors, cost, functionality, etc. And at the end of the day, I most frequently go with Yoast. They've been around for a long time, and they are SEOs at heart. So they started in the SEO industry and then got into the WordPress space building this plugin. And so all of the education materials, everything within the Yoast platform is really spot on in terms of SEO best practices. And they're leading the charge and collaborating with Google and beyond and to constantly evolve. So you need to pick one. Don't sweat it for too long. Make a selection and move on. They all do have the same set of features, you know, plus or minus a few things. And so the biggest thing is you only need one of these, and to pick one, and that the bigger picture is it's all about how you configure the plugin, not the plugin you chose to use. So just installing it doesn't do anything for you. You've got to actually configure it. And that is the more important place to focus your attention. The next thing I'd encourage you to do is to verify your site with what's called the Google Search Console. This is your communication channel with Google. It's different from Google Analytics, and it gives you kind of two broad buckets of things that you can see in the screenshot. One is I get performance data. I get to see what keywords are driving traffic to my website. I get to see what the keywords are, how they're trending over time, what my average position is for those keywords, which blog posts are doing the best, etc. So there's a lot of granular keyword level data that's really impactful in the performance section. But I said it's a communication channel with Google. So they're telling you about performance, which is a bit of communication. You can also come in here and look at how Google is indexing and experiencing those pages. So you have coverage reports that tells you like how many pages are being indexed and how that's transitioned over time. You can submit that XML sitemap in here. You can see if there's any penalties or actions against your site. You can look at page experience, one of those technical SEO frameworks, and Google's just going to tell you how your site's doing there, how it's measuring up for you. You don't have to deep dive somewhere else. You can go in and look at that mobile usability, those core web vitals. That's a lot about speed. And you can do that all in the Search Console. So after you get that plugin installed, verify your site with the Search Console. And all that means is prove your association with it. I can't just go and get this data on any site on the internet. I have to prove that I'm the webmaster or somehow I'm connected. And you prove that either via your Google Analytics account, or you can get a little HTML snippet that you drop back into that plugin. And that's just how you say, like, look, I can log into this site's backend. And so I'm the webmaster here, and I need access to all this great data. Then we want to go for low-hanging fruit. And that is going to be your Google Maps listing. So you can go to Google My Business. This is where your Google Maps listing would be included. And you can find and manage your business. And a lot of people have concerns there over things like, well, I'm a photographer and I don't want my address showing, or my service area is actually really large. You know, it could be the whole of a country or something like that. So I'm not sure Google Maps makes sense. And what you can come in is, as you're building your listing in here, you're going to find a lot of questions that help you to tell Google all of these important things. Like, do you want to have a location like a store and office that someone can stop by? Or do you want to just serve your customers outside of the location? Think maybe like that photographer or a plumber or something like that, or some combination thereof. So there's a lot you can do there to make sure that your listing has the privacy that you're looking for, and then also the accuracy around sharing insight into your service area. And just like we had to do a verification process in the Google Search Console, we also have to do that in Google My Business. And so Google's just like, are you really who you say you are? Is your business really there? And they're going to run you through some type of verification. These are the 5 most common. And I can't tell you which one it'll be. It'll be a little different on every time you do this. But you just follow the prompts, follow the steps, and get that listing live. And then you want to add as much information as you can about it, because you're trying to give Google context. What category, what's your service area, what are your hours of operation, website, etc. The last step here that's kind of early in the game when it comes to getting started with SEO is choosing an approach to SEO. And so the 2 most common approaches to SEO are, 1, doing it yourself. So you're going to go and learn SEO so that you can go and invest in it on your own time and put in your own elbow grease. And for that, courses are really helpful, and that's a great way to get started. The value of do it yourself is obviously cost. It's your time, but not a direct expense. And if you find the joy out of actually learning about SEO, that's a great way to go. Or you hear a lot about people hiring professionals. So hiring an agency, hiring a freelancer who's already been around the block and can help guide you through next steps and can take a lot of the work off your plate. So that they can go and fix that, you know, install that plugin, dial in your XML sitemap, verify your site, do all these things for you. And so professional services are a common solution. At Pathfinder SEO, we actually have kind of a middle ground solution. We call it guided SEO, and it's a hybrid between do it yourself and hiring a professional. And so when I think about guided SEO, I think about essentially us sharing 3 things with you. 1 is process. So we've talked a lot about the what and the why of what you need to do to get found on Google, but there's still that big picture of the how. And so we have a series of lessons, ordered lessons, so that you can just go through and invest in SEO, an hour here, 15 minutes there, and follow a standard process. Then we have built-in tools to help you do things like look at results via monthly reports and do things like keyword research and rank tracking. And then my favorite part is coaching. And so this is where you actually get to meet one-on-one with a coach on a recurring basis, kind of like a personal trainer, to make sure you're heading in the right direction. So we work with a lot of site owners, businesses trying to grow their own traffic. We also work with a lot of freelancers and agencies who start offering SEO services to their customers using our guided approach. So that's a little bit about sort of the avenues, and what I would say is that you just want to make a conscious choice, because there's no always right solution for any one business. Some businesses will do really well in any one of these dynamics, and sometimes it changes over time. What you want to do is just take a step back and say, okay, which way am I going to go here? What's best for my business, and then take those next steps. So thank you so much. Hopefully I've saved enough time here for questions. I'm adding my contact info in this slide. You can reach out on Twitter. You've got my email address, and always welcome questions, comments, all that kind of stuff. And we've got a summer sale going on at Pathfinder for 50% off the first 3 months. So I threw that code up here for you as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. There's some Q&As and questions.
Great.
Do you want me to read them to you, or?
However you'd like. I can also pull them up, whatever makes it easiest.
Just like, that'd be great.
Okay, perfect. Let me, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can bounce through here a little bit more and look at the QA. And if we need a screen, we'll pull it up. All right. So I'm going to go in order from the earliest questions to the latest questions. And it looks like we've got about 9, so I'll try to go fairly quickly. What kind of files or directories do we want to make sure are excluded in a robots.txt? Maybe the uploads directory or other document repositories that are accessed through the front end. So this is a good question, Carlos. Usually it's going to be a case-by-case situation with your robots.txt file about what we want to keep the search engines out of. I think about keeping them out of thin and duplicate content as being a big concept of what we want to keep the search engines. We don't want to waste their time having to crawl through those types of things. And so, yeah, if everything in the uploads directory or some other documents directory are like back-end solutions, they're not things that need to be on Google, then save Google the bandwidth and hide that information from them, and let them focus their core energy on the pages that matter. So that's the first question. What about PHP? How important? I might need a little more context on the PHP question there. If you want to throw in a little bit more, how important towards I guess what context would be helpful. And I'll circle back around to that if you want to follow up. How important are image file names and alt text tags? I'd say they're increasingly important. And the main reason is because without them, we have no context around an image, right? 1234.jpg and no alt text. I mean, it could be a photo of anything. And so when we think about file names, we want to use a couple of words that would make it so that I could maybe pull the picture out of a file, like if it was a real picture, I could find it out of a group. And then alt tags, they're a principle of accessibility, and Google cares more and more about accessibility, which is great. And so I would move that up on my to-do list of being important to meet some best practices. Should sites work to list their staff, officers, and names of contact people to improve the usability and the validity of the site, the phone and address? I have a strong feeling that they should, but most don't. So Phil, you're talking about who do we showcase on a website and things like that. And there's pros and cons. So when we think about like an about page, we think, we can have about the company, maybe a company photo, but then it's pretty vague from there. And it's great to include your staff and your team members by photo, by name, by title, what they do. From an SEO perspective, when those people might have some search volume, right? So if you have some people that are big players in, say, the WordPress space, people are actually searching for them by name, and you would want them to be featured. Or I work with a guide service, and so they take people on climbing trips, and all those guides, some of them are pretty famous in that industry space. So people are searching for their names. So they need to have a page for everybody on their team because there's a lot of value there. The downside to doing it, people will say is like, well, then your competitors could go and maybe try to take your teammate, your team members or something like that, because everybody is listed by name. Of course, that can be a bigger or lesser concern in different industry spaces. But my general feeling is I like to know the who behind a company, whether it's small or large, when I do business with them. And so I would encourage you to add that information with the caveat in some spaces, if you're really worried about employee retention and poaching and stuff like that, there could be some drawbacks. Should sites use bold face, italics, typeface changes to break up copy and make it easier to scan? Does Google recognize this? Another great question. Yes, that adds context. You don't want to go crazy with it, but yeah, you can think of, you know, the structure of a section. You have your header, maybe it's an H2, and then a couple paragraphs of copy. You might bold a couple of things in there, or have some typeface changes to really make it easy for people. The other writing technique is you have your header. Let's say it is, what is SEO? I don't want to write about like 6 sentences below what is SEO. I want to just answer it and then unpack it. So that writing format of header and then direct answer and then go into all of your stuff, you know, show that breadth of expertise is also really impactful. Okay, when WordPress site posts for events that include a date are past the event, should they be removed over time? That's a really good, an archive of past events. So event SEO is like a big topic. And the first thing to think about is when you have a recurring annual event, you want to have a static URL for that. So I work with a lot of people in like towns, cities and communities. And so we're talking about like St. Louis 4th of July, right? So every year 4th of July is going to happen. And every year people are going to search what to do in St. Louis for 4th of July. And so they don't want to have a new page every year, 4th of July 2021, 2022. They want one static page that hosts all the information about that event. And so if it's a recurring event like 4th of July or just a recurring event because every year in your community there's this music festival, then you ideally have a static URL for that event that you can update the information each year as it comes. So that's one thing about event SEO. Then you have the question like, well, what happens if I have a community site, tons of events getting uploaded, and now I'm like cluttering my website with past events? And I would say that in that case, if you have, you know, it's a yoga class that's past, you know, there's really no value in that event once it's already happened after a certain amount of time. So I would 301 redirect those past events back to, you know, the primary event page to keep your site from going from 100 events to 10,000 events to 100,000 events over time. Because that's going to get, if those individual events are small, no one's looking for yoga in Fort Collins on July 23rd, you know, 2016 anymore. That's done. So redirect it. All right. Let's see. Why do I need an SEO plugin? I do all of the elements directly? That's a good question. So with your SEO plugin, you're thinking about kind of two things. One is there is functionality that's not out of the box in WordPress that the plugins create. So an example of that functionality is that XML sitemap. You could create one and install it or upload it into your site. But to create a dynamic one that changes every time your content evolves, that is one of the features that an SEO plugin does. So it does some things for you that aren't part of core. And then the other thing is that within your page, you'll see boxes to add those page titles and meta descriptions and stuff like that. So yes, the content piece, adding content, adding headers, adding alternative text, that's totally agnostic. That does not matter about the plugin. But there are a couple little SEO specific elements that you're going to need the plugins for. And they do stuff beyond that, but that's where you're going to be most hands-on in the plugin. Can you add that verification Google file for Google Search Console through the WordPress dashboard, or do you need to go through the cPanel files? So the easiest way to verify your site with the Google Search Console is at the URL level, and to do it via Google Analytics, meaning you already have analytics on the site and Google knows you have access to it, so they give it to you, or they give you a little meta tag that you drop right into you drop that right into that SEO plugin. Super easy to do, and that's easy. You also can get a file that has to go into the root folder, and so that you could upload that into the site, you know, through the cPanel files or through some other avenue. And so that is another means of verification, a little more challenging, not quite as user-friendly. And if you want to verify what's considered the entire domain, meaning every subdomain that could live under it, that's also a little bit more complicated. I haven't done it super recently, but that's either a cPanel or actually I think your domain registrar like having to put a, you know, some records in that just prove that you're like the owner of the entire domain, not just the HTTPS www version. But Google's prompts and documentation is all super clear there, and so just follow their instructions. Do SEO plugins have a subscription cost? All of those plugins I mentioned are free for the standard version, and then have premium upgrades. They're all really powerful in their free versions, and so if you don't have the budget for the premium, you're going to get a lot of value out of them for free. Let's see. Yes, Phil wrote in, alt text files for photos are required by government-sponsored sites. Yes, so with accessibility becoming more important, certain industries have adopted higher bars, and in those spaces, you got to go for it. For best SEO, should a blog be a section of your site in a different WP subdirectory or a separate site? It should be in the same site, ideally, and in a subdirectory like /blog, /guide, /resources or something. That keeps things kind of organized. It keeps it concise. It's just in one subfolder. It's not some like massive information set of architecture. And you want it on the same domain because that's how Google gives the most credit to that content back to the original domain. A subdomain isn't quite as powerful. So if I did blog.pathfinderseo, that's not as good as pathfinderseo.com/blog. All right, in the multimedia area, you recommend embedding a video within a page that is loading it on the page or calling it through YouTube. I put all my marketing stuff on YouTube, and then I just embed a widget, depending on what I'm doing, that shows that YouTube video. YouTube's its own search engine, so there's a lot of value you can get right out of there. Good question. What is a 301 redirect? Sorry, this is a lightning round. I know I'm talking a mile a minute, but I don't want to leave anyone out. So what is a 301 redirect? This is when you basically tell the search engines, when you tell users to move a person from one URL to a new URL. So let's say I have a website and my contact page is /contact-us is where it is. And then I build a new WordPress website and the new URL is just /content or contact. Google and people are going to keep going to that other URL until I redirect. I 301 redirect them and tell them, when you come here, just pass through here and land over on this proper page. And so 301 redirects are big when you have a new site in development and that goes live. You need to have your 301 redirects in place so that you pass the value of the old URLs to the new URLs. But we also use 301 redirects on live websites that don't have any of those changes taking place because they fix page not found errors. If the search engines and people are hitting a 404 page and I 301 redirect it, then I say, oh, okay, you'll never even know. You'll just go to that URL and skip right ahead. And so that 301 redirect for like the event example I was giving, you have this old URL, Google's indexing it. It was still on our site. If I just take the content down, Google's going to say, where did that go? Where did that event go? And so what I want to do is, instead of leaving them hanging and wondering, I want to redirect it to something else. So they're just like, okay, throw this page out of the index, give all credit for that old page over to this page and start indexing whatever this is. So good questions. All right, should file names include keywords? Generally speaking, but not overly so. So you want to use real words, but you don't want to use, a keyword that doesn't apply. And so sometimes we use a photo of two people talking on a page, and then the page is about something totally different. You don't want to, if I'm optimizing the page around the word cats, but there's a picture of people talking, I don't want the file name or the alt tag to be about what the page is about. I want it to be about what the image is about. So don't stuff keywords in it, but be descriptive, to-people-talking, done. And don't shove keywords in places like that. Is there value in monitoring visits to your 404 page? There is if you have reason to believe that there's a lot of change happening there. And so there's a couple ways to see those 404 pages and errors. One way is in Google Analytics. You can go and look at that and identify, what URL people hit when they hit the 404 page, so that you can do a 301 redirect. You can look in the Search Console and that coverage report. Those are two really easy ways that don't require plugins or anything like that. All right, my lightning round of questions and answers. I think we got through them, but if there's something I missed, just please let me know.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was really great. Thank you so much. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Email is great, Lindsay at Pathfinder SEO. I'm also on Twitter, and you guys are welcome to share the slides with the audience if there are things people want to go back and reference.
Thank you. I believe there's no additional questions, so I'm going to let everybody go. And please join us for future webinars. It's greengeeks.com/webinars. And Lindsay, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today, and your information was great.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Erica, for your help.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.